This is the July 23rd PFF Forecast. We've got Mike Tirico on the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. The interview is great. We'll talk a little bit before and after, but that's really it. So let's rock.
Eric, George, are you going to make the 80-man training camp roster?
Look, I was going to lead off with, you were on the juice cleanse. I've been thinking about taking vitamins now, and really my hope is just to be ready, just to always be ready. I was... Last time we talked, I was optimistic guy. You brought me back down to earth. Where are you right now?
I will say that, I'm fairly optimistic now. I want to temper that though, but I was in the dumps, I think, a little last week. People I talked to within the league and stuff were, but then I sort of realized that there's so much uncertainty that, I think a lot of people were emotionally hedging, and now that we're starting to see, I think, a lot of progress, and I think good on the players for standing up for themselves and all that stuff that we talked about Monday with Brad. I'm cautiously optimistic at this point. How about you?
I am optimistic that we start. I am nervous. I feel like I'm just going to be on pins and needles for the entirety of the season, because not being in a bubble, you're just relying on so many external factors, not just the players and the teams being smart, but honestly, and I don't think I connected the dots here before, but like us as a society being smart will help the players do a better job in terms of staying safe. Yeah. Because if we as a community, socially distance and don't go out to bars and don't, and wear masks and do all these things, it decreases the chances that a player gets unlucky or a team member gets unlucky, and that causes something to get derailed. So I can't stress that enough. To me, I think everyone that wants sports, which should be everybody, should see it as a personal, job on their part to be smart. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I don't want to get too but I sports are the reward for a functioning society. Right. Yeah. But at the same time, that was
also my reward as a child for doing chores. So I can get on board with that.
My parents wouldn't let me play sports unless I got certain grades. So I feel you there, but but I would say, and I'm going to say that, so we're starting baseball today, right? Thursday. My second favorite sport, the WNBA, Saturday. I feel a sense of grace being applied. I don't think we've handled this particularly well as a country.
We don't deserve it.
And I don't think we deserve it. And I feel somewhat I feel a little bit bad. I'm tweeting out, I'm hey, I'm looking forward to the WNBA or something like that. I feel kind of bad saying that because I know that the risk that these people are taking to entertain us, and it feels it feels not great, right? But hopefully, we've all had situations in our life where people have applied grace to us, and we've taken that and made it so that we don't need that grace any further, right? And I'm hoping that as a country, we take getting our sports back, not as a sense of, okay, everything's back to normal, but as a sense of, you don't necessarily deserve this, but please use it to stay inside more, be healthy, take better precautions, et cetera, because I don't know, it feels weird, but I am on the side of cautiously optimistic.
On the flip side of that, we've all heard the spoiled children thing, where you continue to give them things they don't deserve, and that turns out really poorly. So, take from that what you will. Michael Bennett retired. I want to quickly hit on that. A tremendous player, I always felt was undervalued and we've seen those graphs of production, talent, recognition, under-recognized on that great Seahawks defense. But what I'll always remember him for is the dude not wearing shoulder pads.
Yeah. He and Don, when Donnie Jones retired for the Eagles, the punter just gave his shoulder pads to Michael Bennett when he came to the team. He was a difference maker and somebody who really challenged the distinction between interior player and edge player, right? That's when he's eighth. He was, during his time with Seattle, he was eighth in the league in WAR But I couldn't like break him up because he, eighth among defensive linemen and edge players, because he really was kind of an inside outside player. The Seahawks were really that last team that, and they're still doing it now, but like that last team when they would run the 3-4 or 4-3 on early downs with Bruce Irvin as like the strong side linebacker. Right. And then in nickel, they would do what like the Chiefs used to do with Derek Thomas and have him go and play end. And then that was when Bennett would shift inside, and they could generate a lot of heat there with, Abel, I'm forgetting his first name. And then obviously Irvin, who was a first round pick, and then Bennett, who, had a decent career in Tampa Bay before moving over. But, that was a really fun defense, and they got really a good value in Bennett early on. Him and Cliff Averill, together were not all that expensive, and they sort of helped the Legion of Boom in tandem make for what was one of the best defenses we'll ever see.
It spoke volumes about finding, value in free agency as with pass rushers, which is something that we've talked about. Other news, the Green Bay Packers announced that they're expecting between 10 and 12,000 fans per game.
Yeah, I mean, for those 6 families, it's going to be how many of those families, like, how many last names are in that group? Like
3.
A dozen. I'm sorry, Aaron, if you're listening, that's a cheap joke. I tried to split the difference with him on Twitter. He was having none of it, but
no, friend of the podcast.
It was on a tee for me when I saw that.
All right, we've got Mike Tirico. This interview, we've been trying to cut down the length of the podcast. This interview we had scheduled, we're like, hey, Mike, we'll only take 35 to 40 minutes, cognizant of his time, because he is a busy dude who obviously has bigger shit to do than we. And he was so generous with his time. This was an awesome interview. It's long, but it's worthwhile. A lot of awesome nuggets. And we talk a little Josh Allen at the end. You really don't want to miss that part. So enjoy Mike Tirico. Joining us now, honestly, a long time coming, but he's like the busiest man in sportscasting. So during a pandemic is when we get a chance to bring him on. Mike Tirico of NBC Sports. I think I have a decent list of the things that you do or have done, but I'm probably forgetting some. I have the Olympics,
okay.
The Open Championship, the Triple Crown, Notre Dame football, Football Night in America, the occasional Sunday night game, and then, of course, Monday night back when I used to listen to it intently, but that has been a while since.
I thought you were going to say back when you were a kid. I was going to throw the data scientist title at you. So you're going to go after me, I'll come after you. So it's good to be with you. And the only thing you left out of there was hockey.
That's right.
That's the other side gig during the non-football time. But what's weird? Football tends to be the defining point of every year for me. I used to think that football season was like the start of my new year. You know how businesses have fiscal years. July 1's the start of our fiscal year. I thought my professional year started with football, evolved. There was whatever was the non-football season, but then it ramps back up towards football. And it feels so weird right now to just be in, football middle ground where we don't know what we're preparing for, if we're preparing, when's the first game we might actually see, will we see a game? It's just a weird time.
Yeah, like the fall being like the start of school when we were kids, and then all of a sudden as we grow up and become, in football, it's sort of that start of the year for all of us. Yeah, and it's strange. I mean, it's, we have no idea. Like, it looks like we're not going to have any preseason, so we might just go right up into Thursday Night Football with Kansas City versus Houston, and that's going to feel, I think, a little bit surreal.
I mean, talk about crazy. And then, so I was thinking about that the other day when the first word of maybe no preseason games came up. And then we heard we're likely not to have any preseason games. So let's say we fast forward and the first game we see is Kansas City and Houston. Can you imagine being a Kansas City defensive back and you haven't really seen live stuff? And here comes Tyreek Hill. And there's Mahomes dropping back. And, here's Edwards-Helaire on the field and just running out of the backfield, running some wheel route down the other sideline. There's Kelce down the middle. Like, whoa, wait. Don't you have to go slow? It should be illegal to start the season at that point. But that might be what teams are going to have to get ready for. And that could lead to an incredibly volatile, hard to handicap, hard to plan first month of the season, because we're not going to know anything about anything if that all happens. And let's hope we're talking about that.
Well, so that's something that Eric and I have talked about. And we were curious your thoughts there, because there's a bunch of ways you can go with, like, okay, no one's had time to prepare. No one has been around. There's this, crazy time. So what's something that happens this season? What's a result of the weird preamble to it? Right. And I could make the argument that, you're kind of making the argument, okay, Kansas City's going to come out and blow the doors off people. Sure, that's Kansas City, but overall, maybe the league struggles to score.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that might be the case. If we're just thinking about this just in basic terms, there's a timing and a complexity to offenses, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that there's not that to defenses. However, defenses can go toward the more vanilla look, right? Mm-hmm. Let's just play cover two, like you see in preseason games. Yeah. Let's play cover two. We'll simplify our blitzes. The guys who know each other and the systems where we have 5-6 guys back together, we can kind of pick that stuff up. These are the most brilliant football people in the world. Even your bad coordinator is one of the best. It's always like the golfer who shoots 20 over par on the pro tour and misses the cut by a whole bunch. He's better than 99.8% of the people who ever picked up a golf club in their lives, right? So even the guys who don't succeed have an incredible football knowledge. So they're going to be able to do things beyond what we think. It's just executing them at the speed and pace, right? If you have preseason games are, at that 80% pace with the starters, then you see the third and fourth quarter, people flying around, not knowing what they're doing. Now you're going to see some of those people who might not know what they're doing thrown into the game right away. That was where it could be really interesting. Like, can you really start Joe Burrow day one when he hasn't played one snap against an NFL team? That's a really tough ask.
Well, and you look across the league, right? Indianapolis has a new quarterback. Cincinnati has a new quarterback. Los Angeles Chargers, not a new quarterback, but a new quarterback situation.
Right.
Tampa Bay, obviously, Carolina, all around the league. And it's what you said. There are going to be some of these teams, I think, that are going to leverage. Like you think like Tennessee has their coordinator, quarterback, running back,
helps
after
a lot.
Season.
Most of their own line.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so there might be teams like, or with Houston, they just traded their best player. So like, how do they even acclimate to that? How do they? It's going to make for, I think, a really interesting time. I can see sort of any set of circumstances happening.
What I'm interested. Go ahead.
Go, George. George, I was just going to say, here's what I just thought of, which I hadn't really been thinking about. What about the teams with new head coaches and 2 new coordinators? And just the execution of all of that, and not giving this a bunch of thought, but guys who haven't play called in the NFL with this step, a quarterback, and you can replicate all that stuff, obviously, whatever OTAs or practices there are, but it's just going to be different when the play clock's ticking down. It's under the pressure of, there's J.J. Watt over there, there's great defensive players on the other side. You can't afford your left tackle to not know what's going on. So all that stuff, I think we forever have looked at preseason and said, man, this has to stop. When I started doing Monday night, our ESPN contract had 4 preseason games. And so I was the first team all banner carrier for this has to stop. I forever thought we really just needed 2 with 2 controlled scrimmages. Like, we watch teams practice against each other. Like, my template for what the preseason should have been is you get 1 home game, you get 1 away game. And then the other 2 weeks, you open up your stadium to your non-season ticket holders and charge $5 a head so we can get kids, people who can't afford the big ticket for an NFL game, the experience of just coming to the stadium and falling in love with football in person. And they can aspire to get there one day. And you still get the concessions and all the other stuff. You let youth football teams come in and be a part of it. And you have that last day of 3 days of practices against each other. So what you'd get is you'd come in the building and you'd see Tom Brady on the field for 40 snaps. You'd see Drew Brees doing red zone against whatever team New Orleans might be working against. And you do one of those on the road and one of those at home, 1 regular preseason game each way. So you get to see the kids play, the younger players, the free agents. And I thought that was the way to go. And hopefully not for the COVID reasons, but for other reasons, we've seen the end of the 4-game preseason. And the league does something like this so we can still have the dress rehearsal, still get it all out of your system, see the guys dressed under lights and ready to go. But you can also get something of value to your fans as well and that work with other teams. So hopefully 2021, if somebody's watching the PFF pod here,
you're giving out free consulting right now. Really what you're doing.
Absolutely. Hey, isn't that what social media, the internet, and podcasts are about?
Yes, absolutely.
I do agree. I mean, I think the hardest thing with, I think what the preseason offers the most value in is just the mechanics, right? Like when you're looking at Carolina with 2 new coordinators, a new head coach that's never coached the NFL before.
Right.
Like literally just setting everything up, knowing where to sit, knowing how everything works, like knowing what to expect physically, right? Like that's going to be a real issue. Whereas, the other teams are just going to have a bigger advantage and then now with COVID-19, like there are probably going to be protocols at the stadium that are going to be unique to this season. And you tack all those on. And I think, it wasn't, the hard part is there's the asymmetry. It wasn't fair to knock it down to one preseason game because then you had half the teams have a road game, half the teams have a home game.
Correct.
But 2 preseason games was probably too much, given that I think that the players have a point about the ramp up period as far as getting in shape and all that kind of stuff. But it's just, I mean, I think that the moral of 2020 is that like nothing's going to be good. We're going to have to settle for poor outcomes in many cases.
You're right, Eric. 2 points on that. One, nothing's going to be fair this year. We talk about equity and fair in the NFL. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. Somebody's going to have to deal with a harder end of the bargain if we have a season. Again, we're talking under the entire umbrella of, look, football is not important compared to people's lives, right? It is the livelihood for many folks. It's the entertainment for millions. Let's hope that that's all provided. So that umbrella carries over our whole conversation, right? But there's going to be unfair wiggles to this thing: schedule, wrinkles, travel issues, testing, negative test, false test, all that's just going to be part of this. You're just going to have to lean on resilience and lean on it's not woe is me to get through this. And to your second point, here's something I didn't think of in the preseason. Like Matt Rule, you mentioned, new coach, Carolina, has not coached an NFL game, just the procedures of all that. Like, where is Matt Rule going to hold his challenge flag? Is he going to be a Belichick sock guy?
In his art smock.
Is he right? Art's good call, right? You got to make that decision. I wonder if coaches call like, Bill, how'd you end up with the sock as the place to go with the challenge flag? So things like that, like it's really stupid and funny. But I've done preseason games with new staffs where guys have said, "Hey, look, we just got to figure out how we're going to communicate when the team's off the field, who's going to talk to whom, communication, calling plays, defensive huddle signals, all that stuff." Those are things you do get ironed out in preseason games. You can run through them in scrimmages, but I think it's just different when there's the adrenaline and energy of it's happening under the lights.
Well, even having to deal with all the stuff from the broadcast, right? Like I don't know how it is in college football, but I'm assuming the production meeting for Sunday Night Football is different than for Notre Dame football or sure, like a game on the Big Ten Network or something like that. Like just everything, right, is just different and something they haven't seen before. And it's just it's going to be interesting. And like you said, I think the perfect thing for everybody is that, that what you just said is everybody's sort of taking one for the team this year. And there are going to be teams that have an unfair advantage. There are going to be teams that have an unfair disadvantage. And ultimately, we all want football. And it's all like, it's a collaboration this year. And it's not going to be fair to everybody.
I was thinking about one team that was particularly interesting to me is the Patriots, right? And I was like, okay, it's going to be weird because we normally think of the Patriots as having this really big advantage in situations like this because they're so prepared. And a lot of that, I think, is probably continuity. And so I was thinking about, okay, Cam Newton comes in, they're going to be changing a lot of things. How does that look? And I think you guys have maybe made me think about it a little differently, where now I'm viewing it as, okay, if I'm a student coming into a classroom, if the teacher knows what they're doing, like that's a big thing, right?
Right.
If I've been in a classroom before, if I'm Cam Newton and I've been under center before, as long as the coaches know what they're doing, like we can figure this out. But I can't imagine, because I have been there, being a teacher and walking into a classroom not knowing what the hell I'm doing. That's terrifying. That's how shit gets off the rails.
George, this is really embarrassing, but it's like a reality of my life. And we're thinking about football. On my walk this morning, we're recording this at 9 a.m. Eastern time. I went for a walk this morning. On my walk this morning, I was thinking about Bill Belichick, which is strange. I understand that, but
it's a normal occurrence.
It happens often, but not too often. Not often enough to cause trouble. So I'm thinking, you know what? They may win out again, because that's an incredibly prepared, buttoned up coaching staff, where people sometimes are going to sit there and go, I can't believe this is all happening. The pencil's out and Bill's working. Mm-hmm. Okay, we got no preseason games. Gotcha. I'm going to structure this. I'm going to do that. Josh is going to do this with Cam and Stidham and Hoyer, and then they'll go figure it out over there. And we'll handle this with the defense. And Steve and I will figure out how we're going to do this. And we'll go. And teams, you got that. Okay, Joe Judge isn't here anymore for special teams. New special teams guy. I'll spend 10% more time. Like he's figuring it out. Yeah. And maybe it is advantage the guys who have that I'll figure it out gene, and who can project. Sean McVay will be a kind of guy like that, right? I'm going to project to my team, guys. Okay, no preseason. That's okay. We're going to create enough competition here so we know that our 80 gets to our best 53. And then whatever the numbers will be in the adjusted roster world. So the coaches who have the creativity, the coaches who know, like you said, a teacher, I can't teach Calc 4 this year. I'm going to have to dumb it down to Calc 2, but I can bring in like one wrinkle from Calc 4 a week and make it look different, Yeah. I mean, what if week 1, right, Cam Newton starts coming out and running option, right? Can you imagine? I don't know who New England's week 1 is off the top of my head. Can you imagine like people freaking out and Stidham?
It's Miami.
It'd be the reverse
Wildcat,
because I think it's the Dolphins, right? The reverse Wildcat, where he gets his revenge 11 years later.
The only.
But it's against one of his guys in Flores.
That's right.
So what I'm saying is, and I'm just picking stupid stuff. Like you could do anything. You could say, you know what we're going to do? We're going to play one quarterback each series for the first 2 quarters. We're gonna alternate series and just totally mess with people.
That's a really interesting point. I think we'd all be able to put the same few guys at the top of the list. Like Belichick will be prepared. Probably put Andy Reid in there.
Yes.
You mentioned McVay, who interestingly, I might have put him there a year ago. I'm a little concerned about the fact that their offense hasn't really diversified where they've needed to.
Yeah.
Maybe you put Harbaugh in there. Who are some of the coaches that you go, okay, this guy and this team, they're going to create an advantage because of that identity?
Harbaugh is one of them for sure. I think John is not appreciated enough as a coach. Let's just remember, in a situation where his contract was getting towards the end, that was a pretty big dice roll. Let's go Lamar Jackson. Let's go all in. Mm-hmm. And John has shared the story with us before we did a game of theirs against the Chargers on NFL Network, Saturday night game in 2018.
Christmas Eve or something like that, right?
Yeah, that week, exactly. John shared with us that, when they were in the draft room with Ozzie Newsome at the time, it was like, okay, if we're going to go Lamar Jackson, like we've got to make a multi-year commitment to go down this road. And that's full credit. And I think John is in that group as well. Doug Peterson is a name that comes to mind. I think in terms of team building, although people look at the record, they'll look back at the Super Bowl and all this stuff. I think in terms of having guys in the same mindset and ready to handle whatever curve is coming down, Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn is off the Pete Carroll tree from a scheme standpoint and other things over the years, although that's evolved a bit. But also we're going to rally our guys. We're going to bring enthusiasm and passion with a plan with our guys here. And I think that staff in Atlanta would be one. Obviously, Pete. There are a bunch of different teams, but those are the guys who jump right out top of mind.
Mike, did someone tell you to say Dan Quinn? Because we have an issue here that you're probably not aware of, but I'll let you know.
Go, give it to me.
That we have been suckered into the Atlanta Falcons basically since Eric and I met, since the first time we tried to record a podcast segment, which by the way was an absolute disaster, and we did takes. It was awful. But I'm pretty sure since that moment, we have always been suckered into the Falcons.
It hasn't been universal though. Like they've been a great client, right? They've been a lot of fun to study football with. And every once in a while, they'll win us a bet. They'll win what, +10, +400 against San Francisco in week 16 or 15 or whatever that was. They'll sucker you back in. They're an abusive relationship.
So you're pouring gasoline on the fire.
I think, Mike, you bring up such a good point about experience, right? And I think you as a broadcaster, right, you've had so many experiences doing a broad number of things, right? Where almost anything could happen during the course of a game, and you would have something to reference to help you get everything back on track, right? And I think when I look at coaches, like you just think of Belichick's career, or even Andy Reid, he's been around this long too. 2001 happened in Belichick's second year, right? They had to know, okay, there was a game canceled in week 2. Now we have to, and then you lose your starting quarterback and Drew Bledsoe literally the following week. 2011 happened with the lockout. They had to know how to deal with no offseason then. Just a number of things. Tom Brady gets hurt in 2008 and they have to go with a new quarterback. There's so many things that he can reference that will help him in a situation like this. And it's a rarity as far as like the number of coaches. I think of Reed, I think of Harbaugh as another one. The guys with a ton of experience, Dan Quinn's getting up there as well, to your point, that I think experience is such a huge deal because you have so many of these perturbations in your experience that even though a lot of the things that are going to happen this year are unprecedented, they'll be similar to things that have happened in the past.
Mike, I'm curious. So you brought the broadcasting, Eric. I'm really curious about this. Like, you obviously are one of the most experienced. That team at NBC is so experienced. But this has still got to be some uncharted territory. How much do you know about, okay, this is what football night in America is going to look like. This is how we're going to do it. How much unknown do you still have right now?
Plenty. And I think we'll have unknown going into week 1 in terms of how it's going to play out. I think that's going to be the story as the year goes on. What is travel going to look like? What are meetings going to look like? The NFL probably will not have a lot of the broadcasters with access to the facilities, which has become a big lifeblood for the presentation. As you guys know, working so close with Chris, there's all the work you do at home, and you have thousands of notes. And George, you and I will share emails during the week on some Notre Dame stuff even, right? And so you've got all your stuff, and then you take the big stack and you go to the game site. And then you're there 48 hours before the game, and you watch practice, and you meet with the home team. And now the stack gets winnowed down. And you can say, okay, this really makes sense. This really fits. This is the stuff I want. And now I'm going to talk to somebody about this. And then now you've got the basis of that. Now, probably most, if not all of those conversations are going to be like this, or they're going to be texts. So you're going to lose that storytelling aspect, which I think is set aside. What Fred Gaudelli, Drew Esikoff, Al Michaels, Chris Collinsworth, and Michelle Tafoya have done to make Sunday Night Football the best football show on television ever, in my opinion. They have been unbelievable documentaries of the game, teaching people football and telling stories in the primetime Sunday night window, all in one, all seamless, where you never go, oh, it feels like this. Oh, no, it satisfies everyone just enough and gives you a little bit of everything. I think that gathering process is going to be harder. If there are travel restrictions, how easily will we be able to go in and out of Connecticut, where the Football Night in America studio is? We're all traveling from different states, and Tony Dungy and Rodney Harrison and Mike Florio, Chris Sims lives up there. I don't live in Connecticut. So how are we going to work that out? All those things are plan A, plan B, plan C. How do we execute this? I'm getting ready as we record this to go do some hockey games in the restart of the NHL. I'm going to be calling hockey games off a monitor. I've only called a handful of hockey games in my life, and I've never done it off a monitor. So there's going to be a ton of unknown for all of us. And to the experience point, I think you just weigh on the scale of hope all the things that you've come across that were curveballs in your career. And you try to remember how to foul off the pitch that you can't hit. And then you get to the next time we can maybe make contact and hit the pitch. For me, that's how I'm going to try to approach it. And I think that's how coaches are going to approach it too. Guys, Eric and George, I have this theory about the football season.
I'm here for it.
There are 3 or 4 seismic events per team per year. quarterback goes out for the year, left tackle's out for 6 weeks, some brutal call that changes the outcome of a game that has an emotional bang on your team, something like that. The teams that bounce back, and no team goes through a season perfect, where there's no legal trouble, there's no injury trouble, there's the roster we put out there week one, game one is the same 17-week starters all across the 25 positions, 26 if you include the nickel, the long snapper, the kicker, and the punter, the holder, 27, right? Everyone who has all 27 of those primary jobs, they make it all the way through. It doesn't happen. So you have to be ready. And sometimes the seismic things happen. And the team that manages the seismic, like Eric was talking about with the Patriots' experience over the years, they're the ones who persevere. And I think that's what's going to be this year. You're going to lose 2 guys, 3 guys, something. Who knows what's going to happen? We're going to have a game canceled. And then we're going to have to play a Thursday game. We have to go like Saturday, Thursday. Something weird's going to happen. Well, who can handle it? Who can handle it?
That's my biggest, thinking about how optimistic, because I've been, and Eric can attest to this, I've been an emotional roller coaster in terms of optimism and pessimism, probably because I spend too much time on Twitter, honestly. But you think about, and my biggest worry is I'm not worried they're going to start. I'm worried about how you keep, the NBA has a bubble.
Right.
The NFL has moving pieces everywhere.
Yes.
And you can even if you guarantee that everyone is actually being as safe as they can be, like you've got to get kind of lucky. And man, that's the worrisome part for me.
You also need proper reactions to news that, as Mike said, will be jarring sometimes, right? I mean, there might be a team where 5 to 10 members test positive for COVID-19, and the team has, and we all have to make sure that we act properly, right? We respect the humanity of the players. And we also say, well, the probability that these 5 to 10 people are really negatively, adversely, reactive to it is low. And the issue is always like on social media and things like that. We take hyperbolic stances to almost everything, and that's what's led, I think, to the roller coaster. I was remarking this week that George, I was the positive one of us for basically the entire off season, and our lines crossed on the graph the other day. but yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I think that. Part of me hopes that we can thread this needle really well, and like I said, respect the humanity of the players and the people involved, because that's the NFL really the most important thing.
Cut positive cases by 36 in a matter of hours yesterday. So I mean, how am I not to be positive?
And Major League Baseball doesn't have a bubble.
That's the one.
Has really done a. And again, the degrees of freedom are a lot higher in the NFL because the roster sizes are bigger and all that kind of stuff. And the game is a distance game. People are 6 feet apart the whole game, basically.
Right.
But the players, I think hopefully we're underestimating the players, because I do think that for them, among all the pro sports, they have the most to lose. The average career 3.5 years or so, non-guaranteed deals. I do think that if it's really shown to them sort of like what they have to lose, I do think that they'll act accordingly. I do have some faith in the players.
Eric, I would say you made a couple of really good points there. There's the obvious overarching of the physical contact of football is very different than the physical contact of baseball. But baseball may be the best parallel because there is no bubble. And guys are going to be traveling significant amounts of time in baseball relative to football, and the interactions with everybody at home. What I think we have to do is remember that because someone tests positive, it doesn't necessarily mean that they were being in any way less than diligent about taking proper precautions in their house. It could be a contact with someone who is in their family, who came in their house. It could be if schools restart in certain areas, a youngster who went to school, a mom who interacted with a group as they were dropping kids off. It could be one of many, many, many things. Just because someone tests positive doesn't mean he let down the team. Where it would let down the team is if guys are doing irresponsible things like going out to bars in groups of 10 or 15, and it's a crowded bar after a game. Those types of things, which is all part of everyone's individual freedom. But you have to understand that you have, as a player, the very difficult burden, but it is a responsibility to do everything you can to keep the rest of your teammates as healthy as possible, as we all do. You know, if we're all in the studio working together, I've got a responsibility during the week to do everything I can, mask, hand washing, all the other stuff, to keep Tony Dungy and Rodney Harrison and Mike Florio and everybody else who works in our studio, to keep them as safe as possible. Those are our individual responsibilities. And hopefully the players can take that. And that's where I think the messaging from a respected coach and the respected veteran players of the team will be very important within leadership, and locker rooms will be huge this year. And that goes beyond the coaches. That goes to the veterans in each meeting room, which are going to be different because of spacing, because of social distancing. You know, we've seen Peter King's piece at Minnesota Vikings camp, how some of the meeting spaces in temporary pipe and drape covered tents almost, or segmented rooms in the back of the end zone of the practice facility. I mean, it's just strange stuff, but that's what it's going to be. So leadership internally, if we have a season, is going to be super important.
What's your feeling on, because Notre Dame is such a big part of your football experience, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And it seems like college and the NFL are living in almost these different universes.
Yeah.
What's your feeling on what happens with college football in Notre Dame?
Yeah, I think, let's start with that, George. College and pro should live in different universes when it comes to this, because in the college level, it is not their job. Mm-hmm. In the professional level, it is. And I know there's scholarship, and I get all the financial ties to it, but I think they are college students. I mean, everybody gets really pissed when you hear the term student athlete used. But, you know, go to Notre Dame, go to Stanford, go to places where the academics are really significant. They are students. They do go to class on a regular basis, and it's part of what they are. It doesn't mean that they don't have the chance to be great pros. We've seen them come from many places with good academics, but that student experience is part of it. And if the student bodies as a whole are not on campus, many are going to try to start on campus. We don't know if they'll succeed. Then it's really hard to say that the football players should stay there so they can make enough money to sustain the athletic departments for years for the next year and the various teams. So that's why I think they're separate. The college football piece is going to be really difficult because money is so much a part of it. Without the money from an entire football season, college athletics becomes a house of cards. And if they can delay the season, perhaps get to the spring, get the money from the college football playoff and the TV networks, then the house of cards just kind of crumbles on the table and you can start to rebuild it. If an entire season is canceled, I think the cards are blown off the table by one of those big ceiling fans. And you really have to look at the entirety of college athletics in a very different light, because the revenue that we're looking at, $30-40 million per team if there's no football played, when that is the entirety of the budgeting for all these other sports. So I think they are different conversations. I think the colleges are going to do the best they can, but I've got a couple of college-age kids, and it's really hard to tell 21, 20, 19-year-olds, hey, don't hang out with your friends. You know, we've built up the college experience to be the greatest 4 years of your life, right? In movies, in conversation, in stories we tell. It's really hard to tell college kids, go to college, stay in your dorm, wear a mask, don't go out, right? It's just against the nature of what college has been, the experience. It's hard to do for the football players, too. It's different when you're a pro football player and that's your job. This is not their job. So I think college is going to be a much tougher lift than the NFL.
Yeah, what you described, that unfortunate like college experience where you stay in your dorm, that was just me freshman year.
Oh, just freshman year?
Just like the first
came out of the shell relatively quickly.
I was, yeah, it was. I figured it out eventually, but like, you know, that no one, I always try and forget that part of the college experience.
That's where the you were building on the scientist part of data scientist, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you got to lay a foundation first, and then you can have some fun. I got it.
Very, very true. I've got some quick hitters here for you.
Got it. Let's go.
Biggest inspiration to you as a broadcaster?
Hard to give one. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a combination of Marv Albert, Bob Costas and Jim McKay. As I was growing up, those were the guys who I just thought were unique in so many different ways. And that's not to say that Dick Enberg and Al Michaels and Kurt Gowdy and all those weren't incredible, and Musburger too, right? Mm. But Marv was the local sportscaster in New York and working for NBC Sports and covering like everything. Covered the Rangers, the Knicks, the Jets, did the local news, did boxing at Rahway State Prison in New Jersey with the fight doctor Freddie Pacheco on NBC Sports Saturday. So he did all these things and did radio play-by-play. I'm like, man, what an unbelievable job. And there are a bunch of us who went to Syracuse who are in the business because we wanted to be like Marv, because he had the coolest gig in the city we grew up, which is a passionate sports city. Bob, because from the time he was on the air, he always had a smoothness and a way about it with a little wry sense of humor. And then when I found out both went to Syracuse, I'm like, okay, that's it. If I want to go there. This is what I want to do, and I want to be like them. That's where I'm going. That's why I ended up there. And I get there and find out there are 8 other kids who feel the same way year after year after year. And Jim McKay, because Saturday afternoons at 4:30 back in the day in the 70s when we were growing up, like that was it. We didn't have 24 hours of sports. We didn't have 24-hour sports channels. We didn't have, hey, let me watch something here on a web feed of some league. You got Wide World of Sports at 4:30 on Saturday afternoons for 90 minutes, which had, the stuff that Al has talked about in his book, like, motorcycles on ice, barrel jumping, all this stuff. But Jim McKay was everywhere and did everything from the Kentucky Derby to the Indy 500 to the British Open to the Penn Relays. And I just thought he was so versatile and got to see the world because of sports. So those were the three, some combination of all of it.
Here's a follow-up for you, because you mentioned Costas and watching the Jordan doc, The Last Dance. Right. I was brought back to watching Game 6, and what, in my opinion, and I have a very short history, so this is short-sighted probably, Costas's call of that last 42-5 of that Game 6 is in my opinion the best call that I've ever heard. And obviously you hear Al Michaels call in the Olympics and in hockey, and that's the one people talk about. But Costas, for me, and that call was the perfect one. Is there one that you have that stands above the rest?
That's interesting. I'll answer, and I'll say Al's call of the Olympic hockey, because Al has always had this incredible way of not speaking down to the viewer and not speaking up to the viewer. He's in conversation with the viewer and always putting things in a good perspective and frame. And I thought that the euphoria of that moment was matched by the call that had a real genuine nature to it. It wasn't too hockey nerdy, the entire call of the game. Al had done very little hockey, but you would have never known it as you even go back and watch it. I just think it was really, really cool. And that would be the one moment, because it was so formative for all of us and meant so much. I will tell you about the neat thing you say about Bob. And it's one of the things that I feel really fortunate from my 25 years at ESPN to do a lot of studio and then do a lot of play-by-play. Oftentimes when you do just play-by-play, you call what's in front of you. Mm-hmm. When you do studio, you're kind of watching everything in a big picture. You're trying to put a bow on it. You're trying to add context, perspective, and background to meet the moment. When you get to do both, you can almost mix a bit of the two. And Jim Nantz does it, and Al does it, and Joe does it. But you can kind of mix the two. And I think that year when Bob stepped in to do play-by-play of the NBA on NBC, you were able to hear in The Last Dance, the Jordan doc, how Bob's time in the studio was able to allow him to frame, here's the Jordan shot, and if this is Michael Jordan's farewell, boom. It's like he called the play and then gave the line the studio host would give when the game ended, and they're showing the replay coming out of break. And he did both together. And to me, that's part of like what I was saying before, why Bob has always been such an inspiration for me.
Well, and that's unique, I think, to a very few number. Like, I mean, basically like the top, I think with a lot of, we've talked about this on the podcast, with a lot of play-by-play guys, their best play is to kind of just is to be vanilla, right? Is sort of whereas, but what's really fun is like the top, 6 to 8 guys. It's just like they add that extra something to the game that if other people tried it, it would be awkward.
Right.
But it's amazing. It's really great when, when you folks, add that to the game. Here's a question that I always have this question with Chris too.
Sure.
So you've been in booths with 2 people,
right.
Booths with 3 people.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Like, I always find that difference to be interesting.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I've said this publicly a few times. When we did Monday night and Tony Kornheiser was there the first 2 years that I was in the booth, I didn't do as good a job as I should have of trying to find the best way to make Tony succeed. I tried really hard. I just didn't have the experience to be able to put in proper perspective what Tony's role was in the booth. Because Tony could never tell you why it happened. Tony could never, to me, an analyst was always the guy like Chris. Why did this happen? Tony had the lane of a storyteller or a caption writer or a columnist, I should say, better than anybody who was been in an NFL booth, because he wrote great columns for years and still gives you that on PTI with a little bit of opinion. I've always come to the broadcast with the game's about the facts. Maybe there's a little bit of opinion, and it's usually driven by the play or the play call, or I think Drew Brees is the best quarterback. I think Cam Newton has a chance to be great this year, and here's why. Not the platitudes that a columnist usually does. And there probably was a balance there somewhere. I just wasn't seasoned enough, even though I'd done a bunch of college football, to figure it out. I'm trying to follow Al Michaels as the voice of Monday Night Football. I'm trying to call the play and get it right, not screw it up and work the analyst in, right? And then, work in Sylvester Stallone as a guest in the booth, and Jimmy Kimmel as a guest in the booth.
So I remember your first game in Monday Night Football was Vikings-Washington, right?
That's right.
In 2006. And you guys had, was it Tom Cruise was like you guys always used to have these people.
Tom Cruise. We had Christian.
Jamie Foxx. You had people up there, and I thought it was
Christian Slater.
Yeah.
So here it was kind of, the vision was good. The vision was, let's recreate Monday Night Football to be like this place where people come. The John Lennon in the booth moment of Monday Night Football before his passing was genuine. It just felt like it fit. Mm-hmm. I think we were trying to manufacture that energy and revitalize Monday Night Football. Look, I love the fact that we tried different stuff, but I do want to answer your point. With 3 people in the booth, when you have 2 people who are great together in the analyst, there's the play-by-play guy, you call the play, get out of their way, maybe kind of poke and foil every once in a while. When you have 2 guys who don't, or a lady and a guy, or 2 ladies who don't know each other that well, then you've got to help manufacture the chemistry between the 2. Like Collinsworth with Aikman, right, during the Fox days, they worked because those guys were terrific together, right? And that's kind of Chris's nature too. And he knew Troy was coming in and figuring it out, and Chris would defer. He'd help say, hey, Troy, look, you went against this guy a couple of years ago. So Troy didn't have to say me, I, right? Mm-hmm. So you need the analyst to just kind of be this cool mix, or you need one of them to be a little bit irreverent, like snapper Steve Jones was with Bill Walton back in the NBA days, right? So as the play-by-play guy, you've got to read the room. And I think our job is to document the game, inform the audience, have your finger on the throttle of entertainment that's provided within the broadcast. Do we need a laugh? Do we need a story? Do we need some serious business done here? Whatever that is. It's a 20-point game. We better start working hard to keep the audience, right? It's a 3-point game. We don't need any jokes. We just need business right now, right? So you got to know what to do there. And I think the other element is we have to make the analyst the star of the show. Yeah. I think TV games, this is supposed to be rapid fire, I know. TV games are about the analyst. Give me a great analyst and a great producer, and I think you'll have a great broadcast. I think you can get by with an average play-by-play guy. But if hopefully you can elevate the analyst to be the star and help get them to the places they've pointed out during the week. If they are a younger analyst, an experienced analyst, then I think it elevates a broadcast. And when you have 3 guys and 2 analysts, or a lady and a guy in the booth, that's the part that you have to work on the most.
Well, that's, to me, what makes a great play-by-play is not talking too much, right? Understanding how to say enough, but never to say too much. And the 3-person booth that I think works really well, and because I in general don't think they work that well, but Breen, Van Gundy, and Jackson in the NBA, you don't have to, like, I can listen to them and I can disagree with them, but it works. It's almost like a podcast.
Yeah, right.
Breaks out during the game, and you don't need, Breen will come in with a bang, when someone hits a three, but then they'll also just start talking about something stupid Van Gundy and Jackson were arguing about at dinner. Like that to me works.
And Mike, and two things. I'm friends with all of them, was teammates with all of them at ESPN, got to do games with Van Gundy and Jackson. And so you kind of watch Mike and how is he do. Part of their magic is when Mark was playing for the Knicks and Jeff was coaching for the Knicks, Mike was the voice of the Knicks. So they've known each other for 20 plus years. So it's why Kornheiser and Wilbon work well on PTI. That's why Rodney Harrison and Tony Dungy work together on the set on Football Night. They've just been together for 11 years. So even if you don't see it the same way, you know how the other guy sees it, right? So you can kind of go back and forth there. And like the brilliance of Breen in that three-man deal, he'll let Mark and Jeff go off to the island for like 30 seconds. Then like when they're done, you pause and you say, Lakers by 9, 2.5 left in the third. And when I learned that watching Brad Nessler work with Vital on college basketball. Brad would let Dick go off on his diaper dandy list, his PT peers, the restaurants I eat at, the Italian food, whatever. And my tendency as a studio guy was always connect the dots, finish up the thought, move on to the next one. I'd watch Nessler at Vital and he'd go, Georgetown by 6, 2:30 left here in the first half. Like, oh, that like gets you forward. It gets you right back there. So reading the booth, reading the conversation, listening to it sometimes helps us, I think, help the listener at home to not get too far caught up into us. Because really, look, the three of us could be announced tomorrow as the guys who are going to call the Super Bowl, and people are going to watch.
Yeah.
Like, you watch games.
I'm here for it, by the way.
Oh, you are.
I'm available.
So people get so caught up in, I'm not going to watch the game because you're watching the game for the players. What Al and Chris do, what Joe and Troy do, what Jim and Tony do, they enhance maybe your enjoyment of the game. And if it's a blowout game, they may do a good job at keeping you around because I want to hear what Romo has to say. I want to hear what Collinsworth has to say about this or that. I want to hear Al tell a story about Jeffrey Lurie and the Eagles and how they've arrived at this. So you know that. I think a good booth can keep you there, but nobody doesn't watch a game because of who's announcing. If they do, I'm sorry, then they're not, they're not real fans.
The people that have watched Browns games for the last 20 years will attest to that, right? Yes. The fifth CBS booth.
People want to hear Al reference when the over or under, is in peril, and
people want to find that nugget in the middle of the.
But you mentioned, one of the things that Fred Godelli, who we've had on the podcast a couple of times, stresses so much, and I think one of the reasons that show is so good, he lets nothing get in the way of the game being the star. Right. And that's a hard thing to do because this is your life's work. And you I want to be special, but he emphasizes that. I'll get you out of here on this.
Okay.
You've had the pandemic, you've had all this time. You're a golf guy. I am almost wondering if you've been getting your Bryson DeChambeau on and really increasing the drive length. What have you been doing that you wouldn't normally be doing during this time period?
Well, I did say that I've been going for walks in the morning. So I've been trying not to put 25 pounds on like Bryson did. Peter Costas is a terrific golf instructor and was a longtime really good on-course reporter for CBS, right? Peter's a friend. I thought Peter had the best line. He said, and this was the first week that golf returned in Fort Worth at Colonial. He said, Bryson DeChambeau, and he did this on Twitter because he's not on CBS any longer. Yeah. Bryson DeChambeau gained 25 pounds. Gary Woodland lost 25 pounds. Both think they're going to be better golfers because of it. And that is the essence of the sport. And that speaks to, other than taking walks, I have practiced more short game stuff than ever and feel really good about my short game until I chunk one. And then I'm sick. I'm just like, what have I put all this work in for? I love golf and walking and carrying my bag. And I have done that probably 25 times in the last couple of months. And I just think it's the greatest thing in the world. And even playing 9 holes at 7 a.m., you get old enough that you don't sleep anymore. If I'm up and it's a nice morning and there's nothing going on, before anybody gets out there, I'll go walk 9 holes, and it's just the coolest thing. I love it. It's fun. I have a great passion for golf. The golf was my first network gig as a play-by-play guy. It hasn't made me any better being around. I know too much, really? Probably. Oh yeah, what you really should do is, if you can take that outside and come across it, it'll get some sides. You can't do
You're just
that.
more aware of the ways you can screw it up now, and it gets in your head.
1,000%. Like, I'm going to think Fred Cup. I'm going to think it. No, you can't do that. That's why you didn't make your high school baseball team after freshman year. There's just a reality. You're just not good enough. That's why I don't hold a golf club to make money. I don't hold a baseball. I hold a microphone to make money. I've figured out what I'm decent at. Try to stay at that. But it has been golf. Golf has been a great resource for me to be outside, off Twitter, away from cable news, and just kind of give you a little energy and a little boost. So that's what I've been doing. A lot of podcasts, all that kind of stuff. I guess I got to add this now to the podcast rotation for me.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a blast. I would say for my golf game,
yes,
the seminal moment in my golf game was when I realized that I was never going to be very good. I was standing over probably a 40-yard pitch, and Phil Mickelson would have putted this. And I'm sitting there, and I used to feel really confident in my flop shot. Pull out my 60 degree. I'm sitting there, and right before I swing, I think, "Don't shank it." And I go, "That's how I know I'm not going to be on the tour anytime soon."
I came up with this little swing thought on my chips because I'm too often stopping, so I just kept thinking, like, keep my right hand going. So it's just my chipping thought is, right hand through, right hand through, right hand through. I keep saying that in my head before I want to hit a chip. If it's a little delicate chip, I want to get up, right? And so there's a golf pro at our club, and he said, "So what are you thinking of?" I said, "I'm thinking right hand through." Right? He's like, "Oh, that's not good." I'm like, "Wait a minute, dude. This has helped me out for the last 2 months. Give me a chance." No, that's not good. We got to change everything.
It's like in football where we've told everybody that, don't run the ball so much after all these years.
I know. Like, you guys were all over the Lions for taking DeAndre Swift. And there was like someplace they didn't need, because Kerryon Johnson's there. Running back, as I've learned from you guys, is very replaceable from a statistical and analysis standpoint. You're all right and all that stuff. But like, there's part of me thinking, well, you got Swift, you got Johnson. That's a pretty good two-headed combo back there. And you might
if Detroit could ever get a lead, they could run it out.
That's exactly right. But you guys have changed me on the go for it on fourth down, just the percentage plays and the conversation that is there, because I think that impacts third down play calling a lot, and that has given me just a different way to think about how people play call and approach football. I was anti all the data in football until I got under the hood with you all and helped to understand why it works and how it works. I just thought it was too much data analysis, but now it's really changed my opinions on what worked. Because statistically, year over year, look, the guys on CNBC, the ladies on CNBC, what do they live on? Historical data, charts, and being ahead of the trend before it changes. And that's what you guys do with the data. And that's why I've really come to love learning about why on 4th and 2 at your own 40 in the third quarter, it's a good idea to go for it. Like, what?
Yeah.
Are you insane? Hallis and Lombardi would throw your computers out the window. But now you start to look at the percentages of what it means for the entirety of the game, and you go, all right, I got a better chance of getting 2 yards against this team that I'm moving the ball on decently than I do kicking them and giving them another chance to move the ball on me. It's just really, it's been fun to watch, and that's why I love what you guys do, and I'm really hoping that we get a whole bunch of new data to pour over this year.
Man, us too. I mean, we appreciate so much the way that you've incorporated it, because it's not an easy thing to do, and you do it very well, and you are a champion of moving the game forward. So we appreciate it.
Thanks.
I think the next time we do this, we might need to get on a golf course.
Oh my gosh, how great would that be?
Give the people what they want.
Well,
at least what I want.
That's what Chris, I think Chris, that's his vision, is to like have a TV show where we just do regular people things and talk about football while doing it. And I feel like I'm bad at golf, but I'll take one for the team.
Yes, but you're a fun guy to be around when you're bad at something. So.
It says a lot about you, Eric. 20 balls from 50 yards out, and we'll just we'll talk like, we'll make each ball 16, and we'll make each ball representative of a team in each conference. Like, okay, all right, now we start. Let's go AFC East, Bills. And you hit your chip, and then you got to describe what Buffalo Bill are you thinking of as you see this chip, right?
When I shake it and say Josh Allen, that'll be the perfect moment.
Josh Allen is when you blade it and you hit it 30 yards over. I think I'm stupid. Maybe I think he's going to be good. I don't know why. Like Josh Allen, the whole we're done here. We're way over time. The whole Favre comparisons, right?
Yeah.
Like when Josh Allen starts running, especially his rookie year. When he started running around just aimlessly, like keeping a play alive for 8, 10, 12 seconds, I loved that. That was some of the most enjoyable football I saw in 2018. And then getting to know him in 2019, I like that kid a lot. I hope he can harness it all together. So I think there's raw ability, leadership, passion. He's a great fit for Buffalo. I really hope he does well.
I think the league is better when the Bills are good. I just,
Yes.
my issue with him is no one's ever seen him and Mo Schrute from The Office in the same room at the same time. So I don't know if they're the same people.
That's a shameless Peacock plug there.
That's right. That's a good walk-off line. I will not top that. I will tip my Peacock hat to you, Eric, on that one, for sure.
Mike Tirico, this was a blast, man. You'll be
Same
back
here,
soon,
man.
hopefully.
My pleasure. Let's do it again soon. Stay safe, everybody.
Mike, that was awesome. Thank you so much for being so generous.
George,
with your time.
thanks. Oh my God, that was awesome. I had a great time. Love connecting with you guys. So thank you.
Guests are the best part of the show, I think. So thank you.
It was awesome. All right, boys, be safe.
You as well. See you, Mike.
Thanks. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Big thanks to Mike Tirico. That was a lot of fun. I really hope that we get to play golf with him at some point. I haven't played golf. He played golf 25 times this offseason. I haven't come close to a golf course, so I'm very jealous.
The one and only time I've swung my club since sophomore year in college was the time we were in Vegas at Topgolf.
Which we can't talk about because
we can't talk about.
Yeah. But that was a lot of fun. We've got a couple of good shows coming up. We've got Robert Mays on Monday. That'll be a lot of fun. So you want to check that out. A couple of shout outs that I want to give. I've talked about my sister before. She got a clean scan. So cancer free, which is awesome.
That's amazing, George.
So shout out to Gabby, who's my hero. And then a friend of the podcast, who some people may not know, Heckma Harris, who does the Cowboys team podcasts. And he's a huge fan of the show. I was on there and he was so kind. He said that he listens to us all the time. He mentioned you. He's like, I don't know how you get through a podcast without laughing 100 times when Eric, says something funny. You keep a straight face. So I said I'd give him a shout out, but he was a huge fan of ours and references us all the time. So I'd give him a shout out. That was our show. See you guys on Monday.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.